The topic is workplace visibility. Workplace visibility. And what I saw yesterday that I just want to point out to you guys was this article on, let me take my glasses off here, was this article on LinkedIn. And you'll see that the text says business travel nixed for many. And I saw that, and while most of the comments are like, oh, that's great, airline prices are high, and oh, there was a recession coming, and people are cutting back, and business travel, tired of traveling. I read all those comments and thought, the article misses the point, and all of the comments miss the point. And like 26,000 people read this yesterday. And so, what I want to come to you about this morning is not the purpose of business travel, it's workplace visibility. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever received in my career was out of sight, out of mind. And you can write that down. And you may say, well, how is this a career tip for me to implement? Well, hang on just a moment, and I'm going to tell you. Because early on in my career, when I started working for Dunkin' brands, Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins restaurants, I was based in DC, but headquarters was in Boston, or actually just south of Boston. And no one ever told me to have a conversation about or expectations of how often I would be at headquarters. And I quickly learned out of sight, out of mind meant if you're not here and people can't see you and they can't establish relationships with you, then you're basically undermining your own success in this role. Now, you may say to me, but Cicely, that was years ago, and we're in a fundamentally different time right now with the remote era. Everyone's hybrid, everyone's working from home. You're right. And just before I saw the LinkedIn article yesterday, I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine whose company is moving offices. Believe it or not, they're kind of bucking the trend. They're buying new offices versus downgrading their current office space, as many people are doing. And the conversation was, I get to work from home, but I've agreed to go into the office if there are meetings or important events that I need to be present for. And I said to the person, did you initiate that conversation? Are you sure that's the expectation? Are you sure because they're moving in a new office space, you're not going to be expected to be in that chair every single day? And the person said, no, I don't think so. We've already had that conversation. And then I see this business travel article, and the conversation very quickly turned to managing expectations. Workplace visibility is not only about how you show up, it's also about managing expectations. That's what I learned from the out of sight, out of mind. No one ever told me I was supposed to be visible. They just expected you to know. Well, how are you supposed to know if those expectations were never shared with you? So, in this era of remote work and hybrid work, this morning I want to offer you a couple of thoughts about how you should handle the workplace visibility expectation of you in your current role. If you're hybrid, if you're remote, and I'm going to get to even if you're in the office. So hang with me for just a moment because there's contextual pieces there that you need to consider as well. But when it comes to should you be in the office, do you have to be in the office? What level of workplace visibility is expected of you? Then please understand my first tip for you is you have to initiate that conversation. Yes, you may have signed on in a remote environment in a hybrid work role, but there may be an expectation that you show up every once in a while or maybe on a more frequent basis, and no one has expressed that to you yet. Do not wait for your boss or your supervisor or your colleagues to say, hey, why have you not been here? Initiate the conversation of the expectations. Because if you want to grow in your current company, workplace visibility is part of that growth. I'm going to be really frank with you. When I did not ask the question at Dunkin' about whether I should be there or not, they were very frank with me. If you want to grow here, you've got to be here. People need to see you, establish relationships with you. Now, that was pre pandemic. And the ironic thing is now coming out of the pandemic, these conversations are starting anew. So the article is not about business travel. That may be the headline. The article needs to be about workplace visibility. And if business travel is being nixed, What kind of impact does that have on your career trajectory? It's an important question. But if you haven't initiated the conversation of what are those expectations of you, even if you work remote or hybrid, then initiate those conversations sooner rather than later. The article, the conversation is not about business travel. It's about what are the expectations of your visibility for your current role, and what is the expectation of you if you want to move up in any future roles. After you initiate the conversation, understand what those expectations mean for you. Now, you may say that sounds very obvious. It very well may be, but just because you initiate the conversation doesn't mean you understand what is expected of you. I know a gentleman recently who got fired, lost his job because they never saw him. He never initiated the conversation about how often he was supposed to be at headquarters. And it ultimately, when a reorg started to happen and new people started to come in, he got reorged out because he looked disengaged. He looked like he didn't care. And no one cared that that this was all a function of the pandemic. The conversation was, well, we never see you. So a business travel article is not about business travel. It's about workplace visibility. And I want to make sure you all are tracking with me there, because you've got to initiate the conversation, understand the expectations, even if you're remote and hybrid. And then third, you need to manage those expectations. What if you don't want to be there once a quarter? What if you don't want to be there once a month? Initiating the conversation and understanding are the first two parts, but expectation management is a core competency. I don't care if you're talking about business travel or your career. Expectation management is a core competency that you must master in your career. And expectation management is about managing the expectations of your audience. So, what is expected of you, and how do you then negotiate those expectations in a way that not only meets your needs, but meets the needs of your audience as well? Now, let's get to those of you who have already returned to the office. Let me ask you this. Do you have customers? Do you have clients? Do you have satellite offices? Some of you may say yes, some of you may say no. The other lesson I learned once I worked for the restaurant industry was we had a satellite office in Chicago. I didn't have any direct reports in Chicago, none of my team were located there. But I quickly learned the expectation was I'm supposed to be in Chicago at least every few weeks. And of course, that was me initiating the conversation, but also understanding and managing expectations of why would I do that when I don't have any direct reports there. And the conversation was, you have to be visible. You are a member of the executive team. You are expected to be in all locations and be visible at times, even if your employees are not there. So workplace visibility now becomes not just about working in a remote environment, working from home, working in a hybrid environment. It now becomes, are you meeting expectations of customers and clients and going to other locations of where your business may be located? So initiate those conversations if you haven't already, understand the expectations, but then manage the expectations accordingly for workplace visibility. Your visibility will impact your success without question. Your visibility will determine whether you are successful in your role. So waiting for someone to come to you and having that conversation versus you initiating it, you'd rather have that conversation on your terms than to have it on someone else's. So the point here this morning is understand the importance of workplace visibility. Now, I'm an entrepreneur now. I don't have a W-2 job anymore, but I have absolutely initiated these conversations with my clients and my customers. What is your expectation of me? And yes, I'm hitting the road on Saturday and I'm gone for the next 2 weeks. What is the expectation? Are we going to continue Zoom calls or WebEx calls? Or do you need to see me, my face, in person every once in a while? Guys, the one thing that we have not learned, well, I shouldn't say that. The one thing we haven't lost during the pandemic is the need for human connection. It actually came up on a networking LinkedIn event that I participated in yesterday. The need for human connection is real and more palpable coming out of the pandemic than it was during the pandemic, and maybe even before. This need to see people, get to know people, get back to some sense of normalcy in operations and workplace dynamics is a lot of companies are struggling with it. But make no mistake, even if they're allowing you to work from home, there's still an expectation that you will be visible, present, physically present in your job in the office at some point.